When you're using Soundswitch while DJing, if you're not playing a song that has a scripted light show attached to it, then normally Soundswitch will use Autoloops instead. And when you create a Soundswitch project, it will include a bunch of Autoloops already created, ready to use. And we're going to have a look at customizing existing Autoloops, deleting them, adding your own new Autoloops. And keep in mind that a lot of the things that we're going to have a look at in this video also apply in the next video about scripted light shows for individual songs. Now with Soundswitch open, if I go down here and click on that little letter A, that will show me all of my Autoloops. And these Autoloops are grouped into categories which are automatically created with a new project. And there's categories for different types of moods and vibes, like dynamic, upbeat, smooth, random. You can rename these categories if you like. So if you don't like those names, you can type in different names instead and use those to group together certain types of Autoloops that fit a certain sort of mood. Now I'm going to have a look at one of the Autoloops which is already being created as part of this new project. So let's have a look at that. And there we can see a loop that has all these ups and downs, and those are intensity lines, and when it's higher up, then you get brighter lights, and down the bottom the lights are completely off. We've also got different colors along the bottom which will set what colors the lights are going to be showing. And these markers along here, the thicker markers are for each bar and the lighter ones are for each beat. So we can see we've got 4 beats, another 4 beats. Let's play this and see how it looks. I'll go to my play button down the bottom and we watch the lights going through that auto loop. We can see it getting brighter and dimmer as it goes over each of these peaks with the intensity levels. And we can see it changing to match these colors that have been set down here. And there's a few other markers in here as well, which we're going to have a look at, and they affect some of the other features of the lights, as well as the movement of those movers up there, which are moving because of what's been set in these auto loops. So you can stop that wherever you like. You can also drag to move to different parts of the auto loop. And there's also a button down the bottom to jump right back to the start. Let's try another auto loop. See how a different one looks. So we've got different colors, different intensity levels. Instead of smoothly up and down, you've got on and off. And so we can see quite a few that have automatically been created. And let's just preview one more of these ones. So those are some of the built-in ones. Now, at the moment, all of these spaces are already filled. I want to create a new auto loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right-click on a couple of these last ones and delete. And now I've got a plus sign which I can use to create a new auto loop. I'll click on that, and now it will ask me how long I want my loop to be. And just to keep it simple, I'm going to make it 16 beats long. And you can see all of these existing ones have a number next to them indicating how long the loop goes for. And these ones are all 16 beats, but you saw when I clicked on the plus sign that there are other options as well. So now I've got my new auto loop, and let's put it all together. So on the side we've got the various lighting fixtures that were added in the previous section. So I've got my movers, I've got my color band, they're all still set up same as before. Now each of these individual lighting fixtures can have the same information set that we saw earlier, including colors and including intensity up and down. But in those auto loops you already had a look at, it only had that information set for the main track, which meant that all the lights were following that. But we're going to go through some examples of setting up a new loop from scratch. Now at the moment in the main track we can't actually see the intensity level because it's right down the bottom, which means that at the moment the lights are basically completely off. I'm just going to lift that up a bit, and at the moment we still can't see the lights, and that's because at the moment we haven't set a color. I'm just going to quickly set a color just so we can see what's there. And I'm going to select these 4 beats here down in that color section. And you can change the color by right clicking and choosing apply color. Alternatively, I can click on this icon up here which does the same thing. Now this brings me to a color selector which is a lot like what you might have seen in graphics programs like Photoshop if you've used anything like that. So here I can choose the hue, this rainbow bar which lets me choose the kind of color I've got. So if I wanted a green I could set it there, and this main section I can choose if I want it to be a bright green up to the top corner, lighter or even completely white if it's all the way up the other corner, and darker colors towards the bottom. But I'm going to go for a nice bright green. I'm going to put it up in the corner. And down the bottom here you can see RGB numbers, and again that would be familiar if you've worked with graphics programs on a computer, because the light is made up of a combination of red light, green light and blue light. And if you know the RGB amounts for a color you're after, you can type them in there directly if you want. Up here you can also see colors that you've used recently, so you can pick them again. You can even save colors for reuse later on if there's a certain shade that you like to use a lot in your light shows. Anyway, I'm going to click on apply, and now my lights are using that color. And because the intensity level's not up very high, it's not full brightness, but I can drag that up and down and we can see the intensity change. Now I'm going to start adding a few different sections in my intensity now. So for starters, I'm going to just click on the intensity bar, and that puts a little marker in there. And I'm going to drag that marker to position on the first bar. I'm going to click in another spot on my intensity bar and drag up here and keep on doing that. So click on the bar to put a marker, drag the marker where I want it to go, and by doing that I'm creating a bit of an up and down kind of lights fading in and out effect. And I'm going to do that for half of this loop. So I'll go in for the first 8 bars because this is a 16 bar loop. And one more fade in and one more fade out. Now I'm going to add more color because at the moment, so we can see it getting brighter but then chops out after that because there's no color. So first I'm just going to select this color that I already got, and I could right click on it and copy. I could go to edit and copy, or I could use a shortcut, which is what I always like to do. I'm just going to go Control C or Command V, let's see if you're using a Mac, then click where I want to copy it to, Control V or Command V. Same with the next bar and same with the next bar, skipping bits in between of course because I'm going to make those ones different color. So let's do that. I'll select the next bar and I'll pick a different color. This time I'll go with the yellow, and rather than picking it, I've already got a yellow over here in my recent colors, so I'm just going to pick that again, apply, and I'll copy that color again. When I copy, I've only selected the section with the color. If I selected this bit up here, then that's not only copying the color, it's also going to copy the intensity, which wouldn't really matter because the bit I'm pasting it to is the same intensity anyway, that top to bottom. But you need to be aware of that when you're copying and pasting things from Soundswitch. So if I'm copying this section, it's just the intensity, this bit's just the color. Down here you've got things like movement and strobe areas, and of course you can select the whole thing if you want everything that's in that section. But now I've done that, let's go back to the start, see how my loop's looking so far. Up with green, down with yellow, and continuing on and on. Very simple one there. Now for the next section of this loop, instead of manually changing those intensity levels, I'm going to use some of the built-in effects that come with Soundswitch. And over on the side I've got this effects panel which allows you to quickly do a lot of things that might be a little tedious if you're doing them manually. Intensity here, I've got a whole bunch of intensity effects, and I'm going to try, let's go flash and fade, which is a little bit like what I was just doing, but I'll get Soundswitch to do it for me. So I'll double click on that. I can choose the maximum intensity, so if I have it less than 100, then those peaks aren't going to be coming all the way up to the top. I can also choose how long I want each flash and fade to go for. If I have it set to 1, then it's going to be going for each bar. If I have it set to quarter, that'll be quarter of a bar, which will be every beat. But let's see how that looks. Click on OK. So now I've got my flash and fade effect. If I want to see it, of course, I'm going to need to see some colors. So I'm going to go down the color bar down here. This time, instead of selecting a solid color, I'm going to select a gradient, and I can right click and choose color transition, or I can go up here and choose color transition. So to set a color transition, I set one color at this end of the bar and another color at this end of the bar, and it'll blend from one to the other nice and smoothly. So I'm gonna, well, it's already got going from yellow to green, and I could go with that, but I want to make things a little different. So up here I'm going to set it to much more of a light yellow color, and then I can press space or click on the end to go to the end of the bar, and then choose whatever color I want to be on the end, and I'm going to make this a slightly darker green, and I'll click on apply. So there's my color transition. I'm going to Control C, copy that, and paste it through the rest of that loop. Now let's go back to the start and see how this whole auto loop looks. So I'm going through my up and down green and yellow transitions, and I've got 4 of those fade up and fade out. And then once I've got to the last one, I'm going to go to my flash and fade transitions. And so here we go with those ones. Up and down, and you can see the color is slowly going from the light yellow through to the green. Okay, let's see what else we can add with our transitions here, or with our auto loop. Now, with these movers, there's just one channel for each one because each mover just has the one light within it. But my color bar has 12 lights along there, and there's a row for each one of them. I could actually put in scripts for every one of those lights individually if I felt like it. Of course, that could be a little bit of work. I mean, sometimes you do want to do that if you want to have some fine control over things, but again, Soundswitch can help you out and do some of that automated work for you. I'm going to select this main track for my color bar, and let's try a color chase, or not a color chase, an intensity chase. So I'll go to chase, and let's try what kind of chase shall we go? Let's go a forward chase. And it asks me, do I want to do it to just that track? And if I do, it'll only put those intensity markers on this track. But if I go to group, then that allows me to get Soundswitch to create intensity markers for each individual light in that group. That's what I'm going to do here. And again, it lets me choose how regularly it wants them. I'm going to have them half a bar or every second beat. Click OK. And now if I look at what it's done, I've got a flash on one light, a flash on another light, and it's going through the lights as I do that. Let's see how that looks. So now we can see a flash going from one light to the next. Let's try another one. Let's go down to alternating chase. Double click that. I want to apply it to the group. And this one actually allows me to have a few lights going at a time. So let's say 4 lights at a time. And let's go every beat or every quarter of a bar. Click OK. See how that looks. And you can see them moving along the bar, so we've got a nice little chase effect happening there. Lastly, let's go and have a look at this second section of the bar. And I'm going to go back up to my random intensity, or my intensity options. This one can add a bit of an interesting effect, almost looks like it's a twinkling effect. Go random intensity and let's say group. Now what it does there kind of looks a little chaotic, but I'm going to move my bar over here and let's see what it looks like. So that random intensity kind of creates a bit of a twinkling kind of effect, which can be fairly effective in some situations. Now let's try making another quick auto loop. I'm going to make this one a short one. I'll make it 6 or 8 beats. And for this one, I just want to demonstrate what color chases look like. So I'm just going to set a color for this whole loop on the master track. And let's go with a blue color. Already got one up in my recent. And for the intensity, let's just go flash pulse. Actually, on second thoughts, let's just leave the intensity up so we can really see the color chase. So I'm going to select this color bar here. I can also just click on the fixture to select the whole row, which can often be handy. So let's try out a color chase. So in color chase, and I'm going to do it to my group. My chase color, my background color, I'll go with that, and I'll make it every 2 beats. Click OK. So with each of those individual lights, we've got blue for the most part, but then coming up with pink on a couple of them, which would be pretty time consuming to do that manually, but we'll see how that looks on here. And now we can see the color chase with the pink light moving along the bar. Now I'm going to go back to the first light, or the first loop which I created, and let's try adding a few additional things to this one here. So I'm just going to go in here, so we can see our lights there. Now, one thing you might notice with this loop is that my movers are just pointing all the way to the top. That makes them kind of hard to see. In fact, you might not even really be able to see them in the video at the moment because they're just pointing directly up. But with the auto loop, I can set positions for them. First, I need to make sure positions are set in the actual light itself. And over here, you've got some positions that Soundswitch creates for you. You can add positions as well, and more importantly, you can customize existing ones. So if I go to dance floor center, then at the moment that shows that these lights are pointed directly at, well, where the dance floor might be. And I can customize those. So here I've got Intimidator left, and I can move that around, change where it's actually pointing. And when you're setting up your lights, it's a good idea to do that. Now, one thing I'll note with these ones are already all set up, but I'm just going to go back to dance floor center for example. I'm going to put both of those right in the middle. So when I'm setting this up, I could, to get to the middle position, I could go this way and bring it around, or I could go this way and bring it around. Both ways would get it to the same position. But when I'm setting all of my lights, I'd want to make sure that they all go the same way. So instead of having some positions where it goes this way and some positions where it goes that way, I'd want to be consistent. So for this one, for example, I'll go to the left and up, and you can see that's directing my light to roughly where the center of the dance would go. If I don't do it like that, then things would look kind of chaotic. Because at the moment, if I go dance floor center, crossed over, down, those lights are moving pretty smoothly from one position to the next. But if I move them all different ways, then instead of, because I'd want them to be moving between different positions, so it kind of looks like that, nice and smooth. But if you're not careful in how you set it, it's just going to look, when your lights are in operation, they'll just look like they're tumbling all over the place. And the first time I ever used Soundswitch, that's what was happening. I thought that something was going wrong, but it was just because I hadn't been careful in which way I set the positions. So make sure you're setting them going the same way. But with all those positions set, I can add position markers into my auto loop. So perhaps I want my loop to start with up, and I can see that mark, which is the same color as what's over there. And then let's say move into the crossed over position and dance floor center, and then perhaps stage right, and finishing that section with stage left. So we'll see how that looks. So now we've got the loops going from up to crossed over to dance floor center and going to each of those positions. So now I've got my movers in operation. Now, in addition to setting points like that, you can also use movement effects. So for this second section here, I'm going to select all of that, and instead of individually putting these position markers, I'm going to go to my effects, and I can go to movement, and I've got some movement macros there which set it to move in certain patterns. So I could double click on one of them to apply it, or I could right click down here and I could choose apply movement effect. If I do it this way, right clicking, it actually gives me some additional options. So I can choose the different types of movements, but the additional options I get is allowing me to choose the size of the pattern. So if I had a circle, for example, if I had it starting off with a smaller number and going to a bigger number, that would mean that it's going to start off moving my lights in a small circle and then getting bigger. Likewise with speed, I could have it starting off moving slowly and then getting faster as it gets further through that movement effect. I'll click apply and we'll see how it looks. So now that's going to move the lights in a circle effect from this point onwards. So starting small circle and then getting to a bigger circle and speeding up slightly. And you have quite a few different types of patterns in those movement effects. Figure of 8 patterns, square patterns, a lot of different options there. And you can see when you've got a movement effect like that, because in the movement section you have that slightly shaded area. And if I didn't want that movement effect anymore, I can right click and delete movement effect. Now, the other thing which we can also put into our auto loops is attribute queues. And over here we can see that Soundswitch has a whole bunch of attribute queues already built in. There are some features of lights that you can't get to just from colors and just from intensity effects. And if you double click on any of those attribute queues, that gives you access to a lot of other features in light. So for the color band, there are things like auto programs and color macros which I can set. For the intimidator lights, you've got additional options like the focus and gobos which allow you to project shapes. So instead of just having the circle shape projected by the mover light, you can have other shapes projected instead. I'm going to select both of these intimidators. So first one selected, I'll hold shift click the other. And so for this first attribute queue, gobo change 1, let's say we're going to have a different shape on the gobo wheel. So you can't see that from where you are, but behind me that's projecting a bit of a spiral shape. And I could even choose gobo rotation so that the shape is actually rotating slightly as it's being projected. And if I click on apply, now anytime I add that marker, then it'll switch to that particular attribute queue. And you can customize each of the attribute queues. So maybe I want another one where I do want a different gobo, but perhaps I don't want them rotating, and perhaps I could change some of these other options like focus and prism effects. So I could have that particular attribute queue applied in another part of the loop. So as I'm playing through the loop, first it's on this one where it's got my gobos rotating, and then it gets this one where my gobos aren't rotating, it's a different shape. Attribute queues are especially important with things like lasers, where you might need to set things like the color and the shape that's being projected by the laser, because those things might not be set through the regular channel areas like they are with other lights. Now, another thing which you may want to set in auto loops is strobe effects, your flashing on and off effects. Like anything else, you can have strobe effects set down in the master track. So for example, I'm going to set this section right here, and I'm going to go right click there and apply strobe. And a bit like I had with the movement effects, I could have it so it starts off with slow strobe and goes through to fast strobe, and I can modify that, but yeah, I'll stick with that. So strobe slowly speeding up, and let's see how that looks when it gets to that. So I'll press space to play. When it gets to that part, there's my strobe effect starting slow and getting faster. You can also set strobe chases across fixtures as well. So for example, I'm going to go up to my movers, I'm going to select both of them, And for this section here, let's get some strobe chases happening. So over in my effects here again, let's go strobe, strobe chase. And so every couple of beats is going to strobe on one mover and then the other one, going back between them. So there we go, there's my strobe chase. So let's see how that looks. So it gets that. Strobe one light, strobe the other light. And then back to the other one. And I can have strobes between, or not strobes, but chases between completely different lights as well. So there we got strobe effects between different lights. So I had intensity chases and color chases between the different lights on the color bar, but you could have that between completely different fixtures. So I could select both of these movers and I could say I want to have a bit of a chase between those ones, and so there we go, it's going to be a chase between those movers there. So one on, the other on. And it doesn't even have to be lights of the same type. You could have a color chase between spot par lights and color bar lights. So any kind of lights you can link together and do that. So there we've got our loops ready. And if I'm done with that loop and I've got everything how I like it, then I could right click on that and I could rename it to call it something more meaningful. And I'm just going to call it green, because that gives you a bit of an idea if there's a light to use. Or maybe I could call it green/yellow. You can call them whatever you like, and that way when you're in performance mode, it's a bit easier to see which one's which. And when you do that, make sure you save your project, because that will make sure that your auto loops and changes to auto loops are included in that. And when you export all of your lighting information over to your DJ software, your auto loops will go with it. That's right. Now on to scripted light shows in the next video.